Hey everyone, my name is Brad, vlogging the name Invest in Doc. Welcome back. For those of y'all new, I started up my own practice, and I like to vlog about what it's like to start up your own practice, personal finance, and investing for physicians. Today, I really wanted to talk about what happens after private equity gets involved with your practice, and why I will probably never sell out to private equity. Let's get into it. All right, the first step is, what is private equity? So private equity is a group of investors that comes in to basically offer you cash. The first thing you need to know is, let's say that you have a practice, and I'll make these numbers pretty round so that way we can all just basically do the math very easy. Let's say you own a practice that's bringing in $10 million a year in gross receivables. Before you pay anything out, that $10 million gross receivables. Well, you'll hear people talk about buying out at a multiple. So if you look at the stock market, there'll be a PE ratio, a price to earnings ratio. And depending on the industry, those ratios could be as low as maybe 4, as high as, God, some of them get up to like close to 100, which is ridiculous. But in medicine, I think it's ridiculous to value the company at gross receivables. So let's say in that $10 million example that I just gave you, some people say, oh, a 3 to 4x multiple on that. That's kind of crazy to just say that your clinic is worth $30, $40 million based on gross receivables. You have no idea what the expenses are, and that's going to determine a lot of things. So a lot of private equity is going to come in, and they're going to be smarter than that. They're going to say, okay, you have $10 million that you bring in, fantastic. How much of that is profit? And let's just make it really easy. Let's say only $1 million of that is profit. Okay, so $1 million of that, let's say they're going to pay you a low multiple, 5. All right, they're going to pay you $5 million, which means if nothing changes today in the market, that multiple is all of a sudden going to take them 5 years to get repaid in the future. That's an important concept to realize. If nothing changes today. With that 5x multiple, private equity, are going to want to return on their investment. So they're going to want to try to sell it for 5x, 7x, 10x, whatever it is, to the next investor down the road. And they're going to try to get that $1 million profit up to 1.5, $2 million, whatever, as high as they can go. So all of a sudden, that $2 million at a 5x multiple, they just made $5 million profit on flipping the business in 5 years. And then that's how they get out of it. Most private equity is going to want their money back in about 3 to 5 years, most of the time 5 years. And let's say you're a business owner, let's say me as the business owner, I sell out to private equity. They're going to be a clause in there saying, I got to stay on board for the next 3 to 5 years to ease the transition and everything. But the problem is that whenever they go to sell it, that same clause might be in there that I need to stay on board to the next selling agent as well. And if it's not in there, I'm probably going to find myself without a job if I'm big enough to where the company doesn't need me anymore. So if I've got like 50 doctors behind me, once that transition has happened, if they're paying me just an administrative fee to like do things and not bring in a ton of income, like run the practice, they're probably just going to push me out. That's exactly what happened to one of my viewers. There is an individual who messaged out and I talked to. They started up a dermatology practice, and that dermatology practice has grown substantially to about 20-ish locations. I think they said 22 locations. They have a lot of revenue that's come in, but it's reached the 5-year mark at private equity. And guess what happened is, because they became more in that administrative role and private equity brought on another administrator, they basically got kicked out. They basically told this dermatologist who reached out to me, and they said, hey, we don't need you anymore. Your contract that's up for renewal in a few months, 90 days, we're not renewing it. And by the way, their wife also worked for the practice. We're not renewing that contract either. All of a sudden, when I talked to this individual, they felt like the rug was pulled out from under them. Now, yes, they did sell out. They got a payday from it. But their baby, if you will, that they started up with their practice and now has 20-something locations, the rug was pulled out from under them. They have no ownership in it anymore, and effective in about 90 days, they're not going to be even working for the company anymore. When you sell out to something like private equity, it's no longer yours. All they care about is the money because they want to flip it for a greater return. And I guess that's just capitalism, which, depending on which side of the argument you're on, there could either be nothing wrong with it or huge things wrong with that. I have no desire to sell out that huge stake in my practice because I don't want to give up control, and I know where it's going to lead. I need to either produce amazing returns or they're going to kick me out. And even if I do produce those amazing returns, there's a good chance they're going to kick me out. All right, so let's get back to why a lot of private equity is really in trouble lately. A lot of these private equities, when they come in, they take on a lot of debt to do this deal. And now, with the way that debt is, and some of this debt is floating debt, Interest rates have gone up. So guess what? To service this debt, it's all of a sudden a lot more expensive to service, meaning to pay every month or quarter on this debt. You're finding this with a lot of radiology groups that are having their bond payments or some of their debt floating for pennies on the dollar because they are most likely, there's talks of them filing bankruptcy soon. Another piece of all of this is that during COVID, a lot of places were making a lot more money than usual. Not everyone, but a lot of places did bring in a lot more money than usual. Part of that was if you attached a COVID-19 diagnosis to something because you were treating COVID-19, insurance company was just writing the check. Forget the deductible, they were just paying out. Well, now these places are having to collect the federal funds for these unfunded individuals with COVID or COVID testing. That's not happening anymore. A lot of these places that were bringing in, let's say in my example, $10 million a year, maybe pre-pandemic, they were bringing in $6 million a year. Things are going to go back to most likely closer to pre-pandemic levels. And private equity is not going to be happy when that $1 million in profit all of a sudden goes back towards $600,000 in profit. They're not going to like that. They're going to try to flip it. And then that means they're going to focus on replacing physicians with nurse practitioners or PAs. They're going to focus on working you harder. They're going to focus on really squeezing every dollar they can out of you, or else they're not going to find a buyer and they're going to go bankrupt. Now, some companies will have the money to weather the storm. And I think one of the biggest ones that'll be interesting to watch is the One of the big ones that I think will be interesting to watch is the One Medical acquisition by Amazon. I posted in one of my other vlogs that they paid essentially $1 million per physician to buy that practice. That is insane valuation for any medical practice, let alone a primary care clinic. And I just cannot see how they will turn a profit anytime soon with their latest release before they went public and how much money they were making and the revenue per patient, per doctor. The valuation to me just doesn't make any sense in how that's going to work in the future. But I'm sure Amazon is a lot smarter than I am with a lot smarter people, and they will find a way to make it work, and they have some grander plan. But the valuation is just insane, and it's hard to get to a higher valuation. Now, Amazon has the money behind them to say, we don't care, we'll take a $2 billion hit because they have so much money coming in from somewhere else that they basically have to spend a lot of money to try to grow because that's one of the stocks that growth matters, and they need to see more income. But if you're not the Amazons, even if you have private equity that's backed by $100 million, that's not Amazon money. They need a return on investment. And a lot of these places that took on private equity money, they're going to find that now that debt is a lot more expensive, now that incomes may be going down as Medicare cutting payments, as some of these even private insurers are starting to make it more difficult to get payments out of them. And the cost of everything. You can look at United Healthcare, or you can look at HCA, for example. Their cost for employees is skyrocketed pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, which is squeezing the net profits. There's a lot of headwinds that are coming in the future, and I think a lot of private equity companies or individuals who sold out to private equity, I think there's going to be a lot of pain in the near future as those private equity groups are going to start teeing it up to get sold to somewhere else. I think that those individuals who work for private equity groups, that honeymoon phase and that romance of like, wow, we sold out to private equity, things are all great, that's going to come crashing down most likely on you in the next coming years, if it's not crashing down already. It'll be interesting to see what happens with all this debt, especially for certain radiology groups that are out there that I've been following. It doesn't look very good for them. The other ones that are huge, there's huge GI groups, there's huge urology groups, and I think that the profit is still there for those individuals, but I think they're going to end up getting squeezed too in the future. We'll see what happens. Have you guys sold out to private equity, or has your group sold out to private equity? Leave a remark below and let me know how it went for you guys. All right, I'll see y'all next time. Hope y'all enjoyed today's video. See ya.